Hi everyone, welcome to another Fireside chat. I am here with Poorvi, who is the VP of Product at HubSpot. Poorvi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I know we were chit-chatting a little bit before we went live about our personal lives, where we're from, all that good stuff, but we didn't manage to touch on your career. So I'd love to learn a bit more about your personal story. How did you get started in the tech industry and in the product world?
I will preface it a little bit with my personal story. I was born in India in a very small town, and growing up, our parents taught us two things. Number one, you lead with integrity, whatever you do, and number two, you are the best at whatever you do. So it's a combination of trust and winning. So I chose to learn computer science pretty early on, and I was trained as an engineer. We have this joke in India that um, you become an engineer first and then you become what you want to become. But I truly liked becoming an engineer. I loved creating things. So I started my career in the aftermath of the 08-09 crisis, which meant that the offer I had to be a software engineer at a big company was rescinded, and I was asked if I could do a customer service role in the same company or not have a job. And at 22, I needed the money. So I actually started my career as a customer service rep, which meant at 22, I got to lead large teams of people, which was an incredible experience. A year into it, I moved back to engineering and then to product and product leadership, and have been in product leadership for almost a decade now with Microsoft, Salesforce, and now HubSpot more recently.
Was the move from engineering to product, was that something that sort of happened organically? Like so many engineers talk about how they sort of accidentally became product managers, or was it something that you had to do a bit more consciously?
It happened more organically because we are talking more than a decade ago. I love solving problems. I loved collaborating with people. And both of those things sort of fitted into the product role. So my product lead was on parental leave, and I started assisting in writing product requirements document and getting on customer calls. And so that happened for me pretty organically.
Mhm. And now that you're a VP of product, what exactly does that mean? What does a typical day-to-day of that look like for you?
First thing first, a VP role at different companies mean very different things and scope of responsibilities. Let's say a startup versus a mid-sized company like HubSpot, or a really great big company like Google, right? In my current role as a VP, I'm focused on three things. Number one, people. Number two, product. And number three, business or go to market. And at any point in time, I could be spending my day amongst these three areas. Um, so when I start a new role, for example, when I started at HubSpot, my number one priority was people. It is by listening and learning from your teams, from your leadership, from your customers, that you're able to form opinions. So I spend a lot of my time engaging with people and building those relationships. And now that the teams are fully functional and we are executing very nicely on the plans that we laid out, I'm spending more time on product strategy, long term visions, and our go to market sales motions. You know, at the end of the day, finally, whatever I do, I make sure that I'm listening to a couple of customer calls, either live or through recordings every week, because they are the reasons why we are here and successful. So, in summary, I spend my time with people, product, and go to market, helping customer success and growing our business.
Mhm. And what's your favorite part of your day-to-day? What's the reason you get out of bed in the morning?
I love people. I love engaging with people on problems that we can solve and make their lives better. So that's kind of my driving factor, in education and systems that help take those people decisions. So those are my driving factors.
Mhm. And in our product community, we always talk about being obsessed and falling in love with the problem and not with the solution that you're trying to build for it. What's the problem that you're trying to solve at HubSpot?
So at HubSpot, we are building the number one CRM solution for scaling companies, which means customers are our main focus. We want to build software that is easy to use, very connected, very customizable. Um, so that's what our focus remains. And I think personally for me, there's two areas which I've been deeply passionate about. Number one is systems and their integrations, which is where HubSpot comes in with our amazing CRM platform and helping our customers solve their business problems. The second thing I've been deeply passionate about is edtech or education technology. And look, even at product school, you guys closed a big funding round recently. And the way you're changing the model of education and access is tremendously amazing. And as a hiring manager, I want access to all that talent. People becoming product managers and taking routes other than going to an MBA is so awesome. So I think those are the kind of problems that I get very interested in and sort of bring back to HubSpot when it comes to people and technology and network.
And I picked up in there you mentioned your role as a hiring manager. So there's something that I'd love to chat with you about a little bit. One of the things that we've been discussing in our community recently is the entry barrier that sometimes still exists in products, where the chicken and the egg problem. You need PM experience to get a PM job, but how do you do that if you have no experience? As a product leader and as a hiring manager, what advice would you have for other product leaders who are maybe thinking of hiring candidates that don't have PM experience? What other attributes or experience can we look for when we have a great candidate who maybe doesn't have PM experience? What would make them stand out to you?
So that's a great question, and I'm so happy that you're thinking in that kind of depth at product school. If I think about a product manager, whether they are coming from a certain background or if they have the product prior product experience or not, I think about three things. Number one is problem solving, which kind of goes back to focus. And to be able to break the problem into its component solutions. And you could be doing that even as an engineer or a sales rep or a solution engineer or a marketing person in any other role. So that's number one. Number two, I think, is communication. Given the cross functional nature of this role, it's very important to be able to cater your messaging to the audience because you're going to interact with audience at a number of different levels. So clarity of communication and messaging is very important. And number three, I just look for passion for technology and people. And are you up to date with what's happening right now? Are you even interested, or this is just a 9 to 5 job for you? So I think those are the attributes if you're able to showcase, even without having a formal PM experience, it's phenomenal.
And why do you think there still exists this apprehension towards hiring like fresh newbies who are maybe they're in marketing, or they're I don't know, they could be a landscape gardener or something something like that. I don't know. Someone who has the skills but not the PM experience. Why do you think there's still that apprehension, given that product is such a cross-functional role?
You're asking a lot of great questions, Ellen. I think there's apprehension for two reasons. Number one, is the time it might take to train someone who's not familiar with the role because they haven't done it in the past. Now, that's where product school comes in, or the work that you're doing, that you don't have to, again, go to like a certified MBA program or wherever to learn product management. By the way, like deep respect for MBAs, I have one, but what I'm trying to tell is that you can be one without getting into a 2-year program, right? So that's the apprehension that the hiring managers have, that I'll have to spend a lot of time in getting this person on board. Number two is I just feel a lot of companies do not look at talent outside the objective systems of assessment. So you have like these hiring programs and these tools that will look at your academic success or where you worked at, which role. And they often overlook candidates in the sourcing process or the first line of recruitment where these candidates don't have formal experience. And I think that's just a huge miss. And that's what attracted me. One of the things that attracted me towards HubSpot was the amazing hiring team that we have and how much time and thought process goes into making every hire, including myself. So yeah, those are the two that probably are the reasons that there is a little bit of apprehension still in the industry.
Great answer. That makes a lot of sense. I'd love to dive into the topic of leadership now, because I know it's, of course, a huge topic in product management.
Yeah.
As you sort of climbed the career ladder and you gained more authority and you rose to higher positions of leadership, were there any new skills that you found yourself having to pick up along the way?
Yeah. Firstly, I would steer clear away from authority always, or a position of power. I would say that it's more leading with context and control. And couple skills that I think I honed and refined over the period was number one, resilience. It's very important. It didn't come to me as a strength. In my early years, whenever I witnessed a failure, it took me a long time to bounce back. But as you start leading and as you grow your teams and you're leading larger teams or organizations or even a company, resilience is very important, because whatever you do doesn't only reflect on yourself, it reflects on everyone else who looks up to you. So resilience is one thing. I'm still trying to get better at it. Number two is being open to acknowledging feedback. I wouldn't say like always acting on it, because that would be a big lie, because you don't accept every piece of feedback. So what I've learned is to acknowledge feedback, and then I sit over it for like 48 hours or 5 days or 7 days and identify if it's a pattern or an outlier. And then if it's a pattern, I definitely work hard to fix it. The last thing I would say is like just leaning very hard into the strengths. So I don't think I have like a superpower, but I have certain set of strengths which I continuously work hard to maintain and evolve and be up to date as technology changes. And I believe like leaning super hard on your strengths and kind of like neutralizing your weaker areas is what gives you a roundabout perspective in product leadership.
And when you think about some of the product leaders that you've worked with in the past, either as their direct report or maybe as a peer, are there any attributes that stick out to you of really exceptional product leaders when you think about the people that you've worked with in the past and you think, oh man, like they were really great? What was
Yeah.
it that made them great as opposed to just good?
I have been so blessed to have opportunities to work with so many terrific leaders who are industry veterans who just change the game by being in the room. And three things stand out. Number one is purpose and meaning. Establishing a culture of trust and growth and empowering your teams and organization to deliver is so important. I feel like that's the number one thing that any leader can bring to the table. Number two is focus, and focus not only to problem solve and to deliver like products or build companies or teams. That focus kind of resonates as you go up, and it rubs on your own team. And then number three, going back, we are talking about resilience. So those would be the top three: purpose and meaning, focus, and resilience that I think define great leaders.
And another aspect that we know of great leaders, as well as, well, any great professional in the tech and product industry, is being a lifelong learner. As you said, always staying up to date, learning new skills. What are some of the things that you're interested in learning about these days?
Ah, amazing. So I am getting started with Web 3.0 and its impact on network and decision making and the feedback loop where cohorts of people are going to drive what new products look like. I'm just getting started, and actually, I'm taking this week off and a couple of weeks in December to catch up on everything that's happening. Um, Number two, I am designing a product leadership course from IC to management, along with my co-writer Sumaya Binganam, who's an amazing leader at VMware, and you should chime into her clubhouse talk sometime. So that's been a focus for the last couple of months. And then number three, I'm just reading a lot of amazing books because I'm into big time reading. So the two that I'm reading right now are the Messy Middle by Scott Belsky. Highly, highly recommend anyone who's trying to build a company or anyone who's kind of going through growing a business to spend some time reading that book. And the second book I'm reading is The Infinite Staircase by Jeffrey Moore. And that is fascinating at a whole different level about life and physics and somewhat technology.
Mhm. I hope everyone listening just wrote those titles down because they sound really good. I'll definitely be checking those out. And another thing that we always ask leaders when we have you on the podcast, um, there are lots of things that as you sort of move up the career ladder that kind of fall off of your plate. Um, but there are things that we still love to do ourselves, even as we grow in our careers, just because I don't know, it keeps us in touch with our customers. It, like you said, it keeps us up to date with everything that's going on. So for you, is there anything like that that you could delegate to someone else, but you intentionally keep on your plate?
Yeah. I again, couple of things. I definitely want to hear from the customers, however busy it is. So I intentionally want to get on our like pre-sales calls or sales calls or even like other recordings that other leaders do to just get an idea of what our customers want. That's number one. Number two, I keep reading and writing and doing podcasts. Even though sometimes you feel like, oh, why is my listener count not growing that much? But it's just more to learn the ideas and present it in a way I think about it. So I intentionally do it even when it feels like a lot of work sometimes. And number three would be meeting people in the industry. So I think I'm an introvert, so it's kind of harder for me to engage in social conversations. But I found it amazingly interesting being in the valley and learning from other incredible leaders and how they see technology and how they are evolving as world changes. So that's something I kind of intentionally do.
Mhm. And is there any advice that you would love to go back in time and give to your younger self as you were starting out in your product career?
Um, I would just love not to be that self-critical as I was in the early years. I really took failures badly. I sat on them for weeks at a time. So if I had to give myself an advice, I would probably say that learn from the failures and move on as quickly as you can, and do not repeat mistakes that you've made in the past, because once is a learning, twice is not. So I think I'll just go a little easy on my younger self.
Mhm. And speaking of mistakes, what do you think are some of the more common mistakes that you see product managers make at any level?
I so I think one big thing that I feel, actually there's two. The first one is the people part. A lot of product managers I've seen, they want to establish relationships with the C-suite or like someone with a VP or an SVP title. And when you're starting, the most amazing relationships and the most incredible ones that you can build is with your peers, the people you work with. Because think about it, these people are going to be the CEOs and the CPOs of tomorrow, 5 years, 10 years down the line, right? So investing in those relationships is very important, as opposed to getting a one meeting with the CEO. So I think that's one thing. The other thing, with respect to product management, is getting the best product out in the market. I think that is a block that newer product managers suffer from, where they want everything pitch perfect. Um, but at the end of the day, you're trying to build a good product that solves a problem for your target market, not everybody in the market. So as long as you're able to narrow it down, build a customer pilot group that resembles to what the larger population wants, and test it out, I believe it'll help you fail fast and learn fast. So I think those are the two things that early product managers sometimes struggle with.
Mhm. Awesome advice there. And if I'm not mistaken, you've recently acquired your job at HubSpot. You're one of the newer faces on the team. What advice do you have for other product people who have maybe just landed a new role, or they're just about to start their new job, maybe even tomorrow, and they're listening to this thinking, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. What am I going to do?" What's your best advice for people who are just starting a new job? How can they land on their feet?
Yeah. So I'm actually only 3 months into my role, but I feel like I've been here at HubSpot for a long time. which is an indication of an amazing company and a good match, that you start feeling that you've been here for longer than you are. Going back to how do you approach newer roles, I think about it in three phases. The first phase is listen and learn. So that could be for 60 days. You should listen as much as you can and provide opinions where you can, but respectfully. The second phase is when you reach 90 days. That is when you should form your firm opinions on on your product, on strategy, on go to market, on growth. Um, and then the third phase is sort of like building your champions within the company and getting people's feedback on your opinions and strategy and roadmaps and whatnot, and finally getting to execution. So I would go in with a mindset of like some kind of roadmap, like treat it with the same rigor as you treat a product. Your career is your product, right? So in a typical product management role, you would have a roadmap and then you execute. So do the same for this new job. Have a roadmap of the next 90 days, 120 days, and then execute on the roadmap.
Mhm. And actually, that's just reminded me of something I was chatting with someone at ProductCon actually about this week, was that feeling of knowing you're in a new job, but then equally that knowing you're in the right job when you start, but then equally that feeling of, oh, maybe this actually isn't the right role for me. Um, Obviously there's like a settling in period where with any new position, but how do you know if a company is right for you or not? Like what are some of the signs that maybe you've made a mistake and it's time to move on? Or what are the road marks that you should look for when deciding whether you've made a good choice or not?
That's a very thought-provoking question. And a lot of people right now in the industry with the movement that's happening are probably going through this question once they make the change. Uh, so I'm a little old school. So when I make the decision, I take my time to make the decision, but then I write it down. And like I can't show you, but it's on my wall why I came to HubSpot. I recently wrote a blog post, and it went back to three things for me personally. Number one was the culture and the trust that everybody else here has on the culture as a way to building great products and having a change in the industry. Number two is the way we build products with autonomous teams, which is what we call the triad model between product management, UX, and engineering. And it's very hard to get right, and it's uncomfortable in the beginning. But once you get it right, there's just decision making that flows in so fast. Um, and then number three that stood out to me was the people are so humble here. Like it's not that people are not humble anywhere else, but I've just been able to resonate with a lot of people and have such great conversations in the short time I've been here. So those three things resonated. So for me, if those three things are staying constant, then I've made the right decisions. And I would encourage everyone to kind of like write it down why you decided about it in the first place, because opportunities would be thrown at you left, right, and center, but it boils down to a sense of community, a sense of impact, and of course fair compensation process. So those are the things that stand out to me when I think about a decision and kind of like why I'm here and why should I continue to be here.
Really great advice there. So I see we're coming down to our last few minutes, but we have some time for some audience questions, which I've just seen coming through. So Jennifer wants to know, is engineering expertise a necessity to become a product manager?
For Thank you for the question, Jennifer. And no, it is not necessary. I don't even think it is necessary if you're working on very technical products like platforms and API integrations. What is necessary is to be able to communicate with engineers. So if you are able to do that by learning on the side or by talking in the language they understand, you would be able to do the job. I do not think it's necessary at all.
Mhm. And what else can candidates do in order to stand out on their resumes?
I think one of the things that get overlooked a lot is the passion that you can portray for problems. Even and you would see examples like build an app. I would just say like go to these conferences and talk to people and write a blog post or start your own podcast show or LinkedIn Live. Like, put your thought process on product management out there. And that's just remarkable. Like, look, we are in Web 3.0. Network and connectivity will matter a lot. So put your thought process out there and don't feel disheartened if you don't have like 100 million followers. That's okay. That'll happen. So that's something that I advise budding product managers to do.
So I'm going to try and squeeze in a couple of quick questions for our last few minutes. Now, these are the juiciest questions that I always love asking on the podcast. What's something you're really excited for in the future of the tech industry or the product management industry?
I am excited for the 3.0 movement that's happening and how it will change how the way we do product. Would the cycles of feedback from customers change? Would we iterate faster? Would we need to go through large deployments or not? That's one thing. The second thing I'm excited about is this like move to distributed world and having access to people and building teams globally. That wasn't a necessary requirement before. Like, you would prefer people to be local, but now I'm learning so much from like different teams in different regions. Like, in my previous company, I worked with phenomenal teams in Israel. Learned a lot about culture and like how they do product. It's a startup nation. So similar to that, I'm learning a lot more from the local product management culture and how products are built, and kind of taking that and imbibing in how we do product here.
Mm-hmm. And now my favorite question: what's the greatest lesson that product management has ever taught you?
The power of listening. I think it's so important, and it's serving me well in my personal life. I have a toddler right now, and it requires great patience and listening. But at the end of the day, listening promotes learning and impact. It is a crucial skill to master, which I've learned through my decade-long experience in product leadership, and I continue to hone in on learning from anywhere and anyone who's willing to offer me something.
Mm-hmm. What a wonderful note to end on. Such great advice there. Poorvi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for having me, Ellen, and always an honor to be back at Product School.
Yay, thank you. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found that as interesting as I did. Keep an eye on our events page, which you can find on our website, and we will see you in the very next Fireside Chat. Bye.